We are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. It's Andy here, Forest Dean Runner, and we are live with three special guests tonight. None other than Donato from The Running Guru, Katie from Clean Coach Katie, and Rich from Baze187. Good evening, everybody.
Hello, good evening.
Right.
Good evening from Birmingham. Hello.
We're going to have some kind of structure here tonight. We want to kind of get through some good questions and talk about sort of our common marathon mistakes that either we've come across of or we've seen other people come across of. So what we'll do before we jump into any of that is just we'll go through everybody that's here tonight. They can introduce themselves for those of you that are watching tonight and aren't familiar with these faces, which would be highly surprised if you're not. But if you're not, we'll go through who they are, their channel, and let's start with their favorite marathon they've run so far. So let's jump straight to Donato. Donato, mate, if you want to introduce yourself and tell everyone about your favorite marathon.
Oh, it's me first. Hello, good evening, everybody, and welcome. Am I on?
You are, mate, yes.
Can they see me? Can everybody see me?
They can.
I can see Katie. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. Thanks for having me on, Andy. So yeah, I'm known as the Running Guru here on YouTube's. So you just look up Running Guru on YouTube and you find me. But in terms of my favorite marathon, I mean, I've got many favorites. Obviously, the four majors stand at the top. But for me, in terms of razzmatazz, pizzazz, party, atmosphere, and the biggest by far in the world, and that's got to be New York City Marathon. That's my favorite.
Awesome.
Obviously, Boston. I do love Boston, and obviously I'll be going back in April again to run it again. And hopefully, it won't be as raining and snowing as much as last time. And so yes, but New York stands out. Like it's in a different league, completely different league to all the others.
Nice. That's your next marathon coming up. Is that right, Boston?
Boston in April. Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait.
Incredible stuff. Incredible stuff. Thank you, mate. Much appreciated. Let's jump to Katie. Katie, if you want to introduce yourself and tell everyone what your favorite marathon's been so far.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name's Katie. I'm also known as Clean Coach Katie. I'm a personal trainer and running coach. I have trained for 5 marathons and completed only 3 of them. So I've trained for 4 London marathons and done it 3 times. And then I've done the Kenya Impact Marathon, and it got rained off after about 22 miles. So I must admit, I haven't really got much to compare. So London is obviously going to be my favourite. It's really hard to describe. I know that everyone loves watching London on the TV and everyone wants to do London at some point. But I know that I do genuinely have nothing to compare it to, but it is honestly the best experience that I've ever had. Even from like the start, when you even go to the expo, it's just such an amazing feeling. And then just watching everyone watch you run, the crowd's electric. So yeah, London is definitely.
That's incredible. You've made me jealous. So that's obviously the goal for next year for me. But that's awesome, Katie. Thank you. And Rich, let's jump to you, mate. If you want to introduce yourself and tell everybody what your best marathon has been so far.
Yeah, hi everyone, welcome. My name's Rich, and I've done about probably 10 marathons, I think. I'd say I've probably trained for about 3 of them. No, I'm joking. but yeah, I've done a few good ones. But I think the Comrades Marathon in South Africa was my favourite. It's actually longer than a marathon, but they call it the Comrades Marathon, and that was just absolutely epic because it was just such a hard challenge and it really tested me. And the crowds there are brilliant, and the weather was lovely as well because it's South African winter. It's still about 21 degrees, and the people there are winding me up saying that they're freezing and they've got to wear their tracksuits and all that because they're used to much hotter. So yeah, I think they were just mocking me for being British and having crap weather. But yeah, it was a brilliant marathon. So I'd recommend it.
Nice. That's awesome, guys. What we're going to do is we'll Donato actually what Katie just said then with the whole build up to London and everything was quite a cool thing. And just before we jump into the actual marathon mistakes that we'll talk about, I'm just going to fire a quick question at Donato because I think Donato out of all of us has run the most marathon majors. So Donato, I guess the best question to ask you quickly is, out of the ones you've run, which I believe is Chicago and New York and Boston and London, which has been the best build up for you, including expo, atmosphere, feel?
When you say build up, you mean in terms of the atmosphere turning up?
Yeah, when you rock up there, you get off the plane.
Get off the plane or train. Yeah, I mean, they're all pretty comparative in terms of the build up. It's more about just the size, the actual volume of people that you see. As I was saying, I mean, Boston is quite unique because it's the oldest. This year will be the 123rd year that it's going. So it is the oldest. It's seen as the grand national of all marathons in the world. So people have to qualify for it. You can't just rock up and do it. Whilst there is a nominal amount of charity places, it's the complete reverse of, I would say, London, where London, it's all about charity places. And then they have a number of elite runners that can qualify to go in there as well. So Boston is unique in that way. And it's very more homely. But the people, I can only say from last year's race, if you've seen that on my vlog with the weather, the people who come out to support at Boston really know their stuff. They really know the running. A lot of them are running communities from all over the Massachusetts area, all over America. They really do know their stuff, and they're so welcoming. But there's something about New York. I mean, I loved Chicago. I mean, if you see my latest one, obviously having a PB, it's got to be special. You know, when you run a 3:06, you know, at age 57, it just stands out. That was a great expo, and I loved it, and the people were great. All the majors, London as well. It's an amazing expo. The people are brilliant. But New York, it's just something about it. Obviously, New York. So good they named it twice. The expo, I mean, Katie, I know we haven't talked about it. You're going to have an amazing time. You qualified for it. I know your other half has already ran it, but there's something about New York. I know that the ballot places, you've already got your place, but the ballot places are coming out today, I think, tomorrow, so overnight. And I've just seen the excitement build up. When you talk about build up, I mean, just talking about it now, I'm coming up in goosebumps. There's something about New York. A lot of people recognize me, which I was quite shocked. You know, people shouting, "Hey, running guru, come on!" Hang about. There's 52,000 runners here, and people recognize. I mean, it was just incredible. But when you got 2.5 million spectators up there on my day, I don't know how many will be this year, but there's a massive, massive turnout. You're running through all the neighborhoods, and everybody comes out. Everybody. You know, it's just, there's one section where, for religious reasons, I think there's about a mile where there's nobody cheering. But as soon as you pass that section, the people of that religious sector, they're all at that end. They're all screaming and shouting at you. So they're obviously, you know, observing that whatever the beliefs are in that area, which is fine. So there is a quiet section. And I think some people take that negatively. But sometimes when you've had people shouting at you, waving placards at you, total strangers, to motivate you, sometimes it's good to have a bit of a breather and a bit of peace and quiet for a mile. But it's just incredible. I can't describe it. I mean, I was in, as you know, I was injured and it was bad, but something pulled me through, and I can only talk about the human endeavor and the spirit. Obviously meeting Paula Radcliffe and Shalane Flanagan by accident in Manhattan was like the icing on the cake, and Shalane went on to win the following day. But the whole New York experience, it's just, I don't know, the Americans really know how to have a party.
They know how to put on a show,
I'm not saying London don't have to have a party. It was great. I really enjoyed London, and it was amazing. I know it's a hot sunny day. It was, you know, you get a good suntan and all that, but there's something, it just takes it to a completely different level, hence my donuts hat. So I'm so looking forward to going to Boston. I wish I could do New York every year, because it's just, when I saw the people at 2018, you know, but hey, if there's anyone watching wants to pay for my flight and accommodation, I'd love to send them over. I'll go back to New York. And the same with London. I'd love to do all of them every year. But my legs, I'm getting to an age, I can't really do them. I've got to really select one or two that I can focus on. But when you're actually in terms of the build-up,
Tokyo to go, mate.
Yeah, hopefully. So hopefully I'll get a Berlin qualifier, get my sub 255, which I know you're going for as well. So we'll get there together.
Happy days. Oh, good stuff. Right, let's just say hello to a few people in the chat room, because there's quite a few people watching tonight. So good evening to Alan, Brian from Rossa Runs, Mr. Cole 104. Is that, I can never remember if that's Keith or it's Colin, isn't it?
It's Colin, yeah.
Sandra. Here we are, Running Chris, Dan runs, Ginger Ale Trail Runner, gosh, Josh runs a marathon, Ties and Trainers, Paul Barefoot, David Jameson, Outdoor Stew, Kevin Scott, Corey, my teammate, Lee Radcliffe, Jeffrey, our Man United winning, I don't know, and Alan and Malloy Runner. Good evening to everybody. What we're going to do now, guys, is just kind of jump to each and every one of my guests on here tonight and talk to them about some common marathon mistakes, either that they've encountered or that they've seen other people encounter. I guess I'll have a double-edged sword question there for Katie, as she's a coach, so she gets to see firsthand as people are training sort of mistakes that maybe she's made, but also can spot in other people. So that'll be a good one for her. But we'll start this one with Rich. So Rich, mate, if we jump over to you, if you think back to sort of through your marathons, or maybe it's a mistake that you see a lot of other people make, what's the biggest thing that stands out to you?
Andy, I've never made any mistakes ever.
Oh, right. Off you go, mate. Off you go.
Remember, Rich has ran a 3:03, so he knows his stuff.
He does
indeed.
indeed.
No, I've definitely made loads of mistakes along the way. Obviously, like my first one, I didn't go out there and just smash like 3:03. That took me a while to get to. So I think the first one is the training, and the biggest mistake I made in my first ever marathon was not doing any speed work. Literally, I would go out and I would run mileage and I would run for long times, but I was plodding at one pace the whole time. So I found that didn't really help me get any faster. I mean, I could plod forever at the pace I could do, but I couldn't get any quicker. So to kind of overcome that after my first marathon, that's when I joined a running club, because I kind of felt I'd gone as far as I could go on my own, and I needed someone with a bit more expertise to help me get quicker. And that's what introduced me to speed work and track work. And then I saw the benefits of that in my next marathon. So I think that was the first mistake I made in training.
That's interesting. That is interesting. Now, I think from that perspective, you would have built up a massive base there of easy miles, I guess, plodding at that pace, which probably, unintentionally set you up really well for future marathons when you did introduce that speed work.
Yeah, I think it would have laid a really good foundation so that I had the endurance to run a long way. But if I'd have just carried on training in the same ilk, I would have just stayed pretty much at the same speed forever, I think. I don't think I would have ever got any faster. So, yeah, at the time, I didn't know I was making a mistake because I was new to it. But now with hindsight, I can look back and say, if I'd have tried to do some speed work, maybe I could have done a better time in my first one. But then ultimately, I might have got injured because I didn't have that base and that foundation at that point. So you can't really change it once it's happened. But I think, doing speed work is really key to being able to sustain the marathon.
That's a really good point, mate. That's a really, really good point. And I think a lot of first timers will relate to that, because I think lots of plans that are geared up for people that go, right, I want to run a marathon just spontaneously. It's just, if you look at these plans, it's just like 3 miles, 5 miles, 3 miles, long run, 3 miles, 4 miles, 3 miles, long run. And it's just this progression of just a number, and there's no specificity. Is that the right word? Specifics of what you're meant to do on those particular days. And I think that's the mindset people then in the beginning get into. But that's a really good point, mate. Let's jump to Katie. Katie, I guess, as I just alluded to, two sides to this question for you, if you don't mind. What would, from your experience, be the biggest and most common mistake? But then also, as a coach, what do you see a lot of people, what mistakes do you see a lot of people making?
So this is actually something that I have made myself, that I also see my clients do. And the first thing is comparing yourself to others. People see stuff on Strava, they see stuff online, and they then start to panic that they're not running at a certain pace, or they're not running a certain distance by a particular time in their plan. But what you've all got to remember is that you've started off. Some people, if it's your first marathon, you've got to start from we spoke about it before, like it's like building a house. You have to start with the foundations and work your way up. However, there's some people that have trained consistently for months and years before that marathon training block starts, and they've already got the foundations there, so they can go into it straight away and build up. So that's the biggest thing, is comparing yourself to others. You've just got to trust the process that you're on and not worry about anyone else, because if you worry about what other people are doing, then you take the focus away from yourself. So that's a massive thing. That's probably how I got injured when I was training for London, because I was comparing myself to what other people were doing and thought like I needed to do more. So I went out and did a lot more mileage and overtrained, and then become injured. Another thing that that I see in my athletes is people not honouring or listening to their body. And I kind of set myself up for this sometimes because I write my clients' training plans, and there's the pressure to tick every single box on that plan, rather than taking a step back and thinking, oh, I've got a slight niggle today, I'm going to not do this run. They'd rather go and attempt it and then maybe then injure themselves because they've gone out and done it. And I've had to do exactly the same myself recently, where my plan has completely gone out the window and every day I'm just seeing how I feel. So because of injury, I've then picked up illnesses. And yeah, the last 4 weeks have literally been day by day. So the biggest thing is not like listening to your body. If you need to take a rest day, don't be lazy, like, oh, if you can't be bothered to go out, don't take a rest day. But if you feel like your body's absolutely shattered or tired, there's no point trying to, because you're not going to achieve anything. So yeah, the two biggest things are comparing yourself to others and not listening to your body.
Incredible. Oh, such good advice there, and advice that I think we all kind of fall foul of at some point. I mean, ironically, now that I have a coach, I'm finding it easier. Like if I was just running off a plan before, I would do exactly that and I would push through and not listen to my body. Whereas now I have a coach, and I guess this is a plug for coaches really. I feel I have someone to talk to, that I can say, hey, I'm not feeling 100%, what should I do? And then my coach Doug would say, right, okay, let's swap Wednesday and Thursday around. Let's do your easy run today. See how you feel. If you feel good and better tomorrow, hit your session. If you're still not feeling great, just stick to easy. We'll pick it up on the weekend. And I guess, yeah, that sort of mentality of pushing through leads to injuries, leads to, you know, problems. And not only that, the whole Strava thing is, yeah, I used to, you know, guilty. I used to stop my watch after my warm-up and then just do my workout as a separate thing, so that I could have like the lowest pace as possible, you know, showing people what I could do. And actually, I just, about a year ago, I just kind of ditched all that. I thought, what are you doing? And who are you trying to prove to? What are you trying to prove? So now I just set my watch up with the workout and do it all in one go. And I don't worry about that. And now I can spot other people doing that same thing. Like I can see what they're trying to do. And you know, there's no need really, is there?
No.
You're going to massively ruin your end of year Strava video. It's going to say you've done like 50 runs rather than 1,000.
What are you
doing?
Oh, good grief.
3 runs per day. Yeah, I mean, I try and be transparent as possible. So I do a lot of posts on Instagram about my training and how it's going, and even with my Strava post, because what actually you see on Strava in terms of the distance and the pace is not necessarily a true reflection of what actually has been happening. And so with all of my athletes, it's exactly the same. I call them all athletes, they are. So on Strava, I'll have a quick flick through Strava and look at their runs, and then I go onto the coaching app and they've left feedback and it's completely different. So to everyone else, they're like, oh, what a fantastic session you've just done. And then in the feedback, they're like, that took everything out of me today. So sometimes, and even like today, I went out and did an hour, which meant to be an hour easy. My legs were hating every single step. So I titled it, My Legs Hate Wednesdays. And just to like, a few people have laughed at it, a few people have commented on it, just to be real.
Honest, transparent.
Transparent.
That's amazing. Brilliant advice. Guys, just before we jump to Donato, questions, put them in the chat. We will come to questions after Donato. I am watching the chat. I can see a few questions coming in, so we will get to those. But before we do that, Donato, you have run a fair few marathons yourself now. Most common mistake you see, most common mistake you've fallen foul of. What's your opinion?
Yeah, there's, I think a lot of being, so I've been reading the comments there, and obviously they've seen my notes, because I've listed 6, but I'll start with the number one, which those of you who've been watching my channel, I'm doing a review of a nice simple polar. Oh, by the way, I deleted Strava. Yeah, there's lots of reasons. I won't go into the politics of Strava, but I deleted my Strava account for the precise reason that a lot of people have already touched on. Unbeknownst to me, people were watching it and comparing themselves and doing things which they shouldn't have been doing. So I thought the best thing I can do is, yes, I know you can set it to private, but I just deleted the whole thing so nobody can get the data. But there was an incident only the other day. A guy went out for a 20 miler and ran it at pace of 4:30 and posted this on social media. Whoa, the comments that came in says, well, that's a crazy fast speed. But as Katie just said, he didn't leave all the comments of what he'd done and so on and so forth. went out a bit too quick for a so-called easy run. So when you're running at those paces, that's like a 2:48 marathon pace. So he's nowhere near that. And I know someone's commented on it, which is what my common mistake is. It's these things, these bloody watches. Yeah, bin them. Get rid of your watches during the race. Do not look at your pace. Do not look at it. I made that mistake in my first marathon. If you look at me in Brighton, every kilometre when I'm filming myself, I was talking to myself, I'm bang on pace, bang on pace. And I saw someone comment on here, you get with a pacer and you follow the pacer that's way beyond your limit, and you come in sort of 10, 20 minutes way off that pace. So the key thing is don't look at the watch, run on how you feel. You go out slow and then pick it up as you go along. So I think when you're comparing half marathon times and marathon times, they are completely different. Me as a beginner, I stupidly thought that if you've ran a 1:45 marathon, you can run a 3:30 easy. Yeah, no. So it doesn't work that way. When you get the experience, you know how to work on that way. So the biggest mistake that I've made, and I see people make all the time, and I see them at every race, is they continually looking at this. Even on Saturday's park run, as you probably know, I ran a new PB. 18 minutes and 18. I ain't got time to look at my watch. So when I see people ahead of me looking at their watch, I know they're gasping for air, and I'm going to pass them, and I do pass them. So it does make me giggle why on 5K people keep looking at the watch. It just doesn't. You know, if you think I'm getting a bit emotional, it really does. And I've seen a lot of top athletes, and it's great that Katie referred to them as athletes. But the athletes I'm talking about, the ones who run for England, Great Britain, they've stopped looking at these in 6 months, because I do track them. And, you know, their race times have dramatically increased, because they've stopped looking at it and they run on feel. So it's all interconnected. Listen to your body, run on feel, and it's all about the training. Train. Whether it's easy training, sprint training, you train on feel. And but the big mistake for the marathon itself is continually looking at this thing. It's great that you can record it and record the runs. And I think Colin mentioned on my live chat is you can see this and you can see your progress. It's great to monitor post runs, but during a race, and the marathon, I regard it as a race, I want to run it as quick as I can, is that you're going to have a kilometre or a mile that will be slow. And if you're continually looking at it, we know it's a psychological thing, running a marathon. It's not, I'd say it's 90% up here, and the other 10% is your physiological and how you've trained it. If you see a time and you've got, say you're targeting an 8-minute pace, and it suddenly says 9 minutes, what's your brain going to do? Oh shit, I've blown it. That's what it'll do. These are the words I've had from professional coaches. Oh shit, I've blown it. And your whole race falls apart from that moment. And that's what happened to me. And that's what happens to people time again. So I've learned from my mistake is not to look at this. And yes, I know people can pick up paces and they can overcome this and overcome that, but you got to put your cards in your favor. And I think looking at these is just such, you know, it's not the best thing. If you want to look at it and you run on pace, carry on. But I think those who've been doing that and they've been getting injured or getting all sorts of things and not improving their times, as soon as they drop that, their times dramatically improved. And I've seen that with myself, obviously, from, you know, from one time to another. It's the proof is in the pudding. So yeah,
really good point, mate. I think like touching on that, because that is something that I also am starting to do. Sort of about a year ago, I started to get very disillusioned with the watch, and I publicly said on YouTube that I'm going to start turning my watch inside my wrist so that I can't look at it, and then all I'm going to do is hear the bleeps, even to the point where I can turn the bleeps off. But I've gone to the level now in training, as I just alluded to talking to Katie, where I set the watch up on interval. So for example, in my long run workouts, if I'm doing 2.5 hours and I've got 4 by 15 minutes, rather than me hitting lap and then it doing 2.2 miles or whatever I cover in the 15 minutes and it giving me the mile splits, I just have it set to 15 minutes. Therefore, I can't tell what time I'm running, and I'm having to go by how I feel, and then talking to myself the whole way around going, right, this is rep 1 of 4. Can I do the next 3? How do I feel? How's my breathing? How's my form? Rather than, oh, that was a 6:0 something or a 6:10. That was really quick, or that was really slow. And I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that will get me to the marathon in a position where I'm not staring at this thing. All workouts are done completely sort of not knowing what the pace I'm doing, which is interesting because you get home and you go, oh, that was quick, or oh, that wasn't so good. But you're not, like you said, your brain doesn't go, oh shit, I've blown it in the middle of your workout. You shouldn't be thinking that in your workout. You should just be doing your workout regardless of pace.
Exactly. I mean, when I was attending, I mean, I was fortunate enough to be running for a charity, and the coaches who I found out actually coach the England national team. So these coaches know what they're talking about, and they said this point about not looking at the watch. But obviously, when you're a beginner, we all know better, don't we? You know, or what do they know? You know, and we don't really know how good they were. We just thought they're just coaches from the charity, and we didn't know that they were national coaches. But anyway, sorry, Katie.
I ran my first marathon in 2014 at London, and I didn't actually have a watch at the time. I just used I think like the Nike app to track. So I had like a big chunky iPhone
on your phone, yeah, like that.
Yeah, and I had it on my strap, and so I was on the London Marathon start line. I tried to turn down the brightness on my phone to save battery for my music, so I could listen to tunes along the way. And somehow I deleted the Nike app off of my phone. So I was standing on the start line, shuffling to the front and panicking that I wouldn't be able to track my run because I deleted the Nike app. And I was standing with a friend at the time, and they were like, Kate, this is the start of the London Marathon. Just don't worry, just run. You're here to run. You're not here to track the app or anything like that. And because of the signal, I was fretting. They're like, look, the BBC's there, going over the line, and that was it. I just ran. And I ran by feel, and I ran. That was my first marathon in 3:54, and in an even split. The first half and the second half.
There you go. Way
amazing. That's good. And guys, I've just got to say that we've got some incredible sort of chat going on here in the chat room. If my eyes are diverting, it's because I'm looking at some of the questions. I see Rich has been posting comments in there. And we're all talking about watches and Strava, loads of kind of really not contradicting, but sort of some people saying they like it, some people saying they don't like it, which is great. And everyone's talking about their watches. The Malloy runner's made a comment about the biggest mistake he sees is people jumping out too fast and breathing too hard in the first sort of 300-400 meters. And I guess sort of like Donato, what you're alluding to at parkrun, it's kind of like you see these people up ahead of you checking your watches. If you can hear someone breathing heavy that early in a marathon, you've got to be questioning what on earth they're doing. Just having a quick look down here. Blimey, everyone's got so many. Garmin seems to be a favourite. The Forerunner 235 is a pretty popular watch here. I was going to say, guys, so obviously, Donato, you're using Polar Watch. Rich, what do you use? And Katie, what do you use?
So I'm got a Garmin Phoenix 3 at the moment.
Okay. What was it like? Is it one of those fancy gadgety type things, or is it just a typical running watch?
Yeah, so they do one with a HR monitor on the wrist, but this one doesn't have it. I got this for Comrades because it has 20 hours battery life, and that was potentially a 12-hour race, so I needed a decent battery. But it does navigation, so like I went out to do this route around Aylesbury where I live called the Aylesbury Ring, and it's a 36-mile route, but it's all out in the sticks. I didn't know it. So I downloaded a GPX of the route, and I was able to navigate around the route using the watch. So it was useful for that kind of stuff.
Okay, that's interesting. Katie, what do you use?
I've got a Garmin 235, which is very popular.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
This was a gift from James last year, and I think this only tracks running. So I know that some other Garmin's tracks swimming. This does track cycling and stuff, but for me, it's just it works for me because it has everything that I need to. I just hit start and go out for a run. Like you say, if you need to get a workout through there, then you can do that as well. And for me, for my job, it's quite neat and sporty, so it works. So I wear it all the time. It's really user friendly. I've always had Garmin's. I've always had like the Forerunner, and then just upgraded when I felt like I wanted.
That's a good, that for me is the type of watch that I like. So I've still got a really old version. I've got the Forerunner 220. Literally just does runs, and that's it. It's very basic, nothing else. It has GPS wobbles here and there. Being in the forest, that's expected, but on the whole, I like it because it's just basic. It doesn't do too much else. But I guess when you move up to ultras and you need to self-navigate, then something like what Rich has got would obviously be a lot better. But something that none of you have said tonight, and there's no questions about in the chat, so I'm going to just kind of fire this at the three of you. Nutrition during a marathon. Something that a lot of people say is it's not the fact that you've gone out too fast, and it's sometimes not even your muscles that are fatiguing, but it's your nutrition that you've got wrong. So either the common ways that you would plummet towards the end of the marathon is you've gone out too fast, your muscles are fatigued, or nutrition. For me personally, I haven't failed, but I haven't succeeded as well as I'd like to in one of my recent marathons. My last one, due to nutrition, completely got it wrong. Super hot day, like what London was. It was the week after London. It was a trail marathon, totally overdrank, completely messed up my race, felt like crap. So nutrition-wise, what do you guys think on that? What are your nutrition strategies during a race? Let's start with Katie. What's yours?
So I'm still sort of trialing different stuff, but I use gels. A lot of people don't like gels, and I've been trialing different stuff this time round. So gels for me, I take them with me. I've got some awesome shorts that Fusion shorts. They've got the pockets down the side, so it's perfect. You can just whack a gel out. I tend to take 3 or 4 with me, and I tend to take them every 5 miles. So okay. 5 miles in a marathon seems quite early, but I feel like you need to take on nutrition before you actually need it, because once you're too tired, it's too late. I have tried different stuff this time round in terms of like flapjacks and shot blocks, but actually what's been working for me is I've been also having like sweets, so jelly babies. I feel that it's just an instant hit of sugar, and it's worked. I know that it doesn't work for everyone. I've heard different things that people use, like tailwind's meant to be really good, and that's one thing that I must admit is that I don't, with my training runs, I'm not as good as what I should be with hydration. I don't use a backpack. I don't like holding a bottle. So it is something that I try and advise my clients to do, but I've never invested in that kind of thing.
What about a belt? Do you have a belt?
I've had them, and I have run some early marathons with them, but I just don't like sometimes how they sit and how they move around. So when we did the Kenya marathon, we had these really good bottles that once you drink out of them, they then shrink.
Okay.
I have always relied on, in races, having water stations. So I've always just fueled that way. But okay. I know that's a downfall of mine. I don't feel like I've really ever, I've never blamed, not blamed the race going wrong, but I don't feel like if anything's gone wrong in a race, I wouldn't say it's been down to my nutrition. It's just because I've gone out too fast, too early.
Yeah. Okay, Rich, what about you? How do you feel?
Yeah, I'm just looking down the comments, and Tyres and Trainers and Goku Runner and Lee Ratcliffe are all saying about SIS gels.
That's what I use. Yeah, that's what I use. That's my favourite gel. And what I tend to do is I train without using gels. I keep them on me, because if I tank massively in a training run and I'm, miles away from home and I need to pick myself back up to get home, obviously I've got the gels to kind of rescue myself if I need to and pull myself out that hole. But I try to run without them so that my body will learn to cope with hitting the wall and cope without carbohydrates. Because I think invariably you're probably going to get really low or run out of carbohydrates during a marathon. So if your body's dealt with that in training and dealt with it before, my sort of opinion is that the body will do it in the race. And also, I think if you use gels in your training, your body gets very used to having them, and they become more of a crutch that you will lean on. Whereas if you haven't used them and then you go to the race and you suddenly have a gel, your body's like, wow, I haven't had this before. This is amazing. So I tend to try and train without them, but then in the race, I'll take about 3 with me. And there's usually, on a marathon race, there's usually like 2 or 3 on the course as well, which I'll pick all the ones up on the course. But I don't want to carry a whole Batman belt full of, gels and have
have armbands on full of gels, and as you start running and everybody's arms bashing into each other, and there's gels flying everywhere in the start pens. Like, you don't want that. I have a little zip on the back of my shorts, and I just keep 3 in there.
Yeah.
But one of those will be the caffeine-based one, which, to be honest, like, I'm a bit of a coffee addict anyway, so I don't know whether this is just a mental thing for me, but I have the espresso coffee one, and I save that for 20 miles because, you know, everybody says the race begins at 20 miles. So I think, well, you know, I've had my breakfast. It's like coffee time now. If I was at work, it's time for my coffee gel, and then that gives me a bit of a mental boost, I think, and I'm away then. So yeah, and I try and space them out, like Katie said. I don't wait till later when I'm knackered. You know, I take one about 6 miles, and of course I do 15, 16 mile training runs with no gels, so I don't need it at 6 miles. But I just think topping up as you go is quite good. And I did that in Frankfurt, and I did 4 hours in Frankfurt last year. It's not my fastest time, but in terms of how I felt like I could continue running the whole day, you know, throughout that race. I didn't ever feel like I was battered, and I was taking the gels, you know, at regular intervals.
You did really well on that one, mate, and I really enjoyed that video. And just before we jump to Donato with that question, I've got to put my 2 pennies worth in there, because for me personally, exactly what Casey and you have said, and I would stress to anybody, is do start your nutrition early. Don't wait. That's what I used to do in the first year. I used to think, oh, I'll wait till I'm depleted. Oh, I need a gel. That's not the case. I remember doing a training talk about it about 2 or 3 months ago, saying you need to keep your stores topped up. If you get to the point of no return, a gel is going to do you no good whatsoever at that point. So
yeah,
me, I tend to go every half an hour, which is what they recommend, sort of half an hour to every 40 minutes, whatever mileage that might be. So in my marathon, if I'm trying to get just shy of 3 hours, I'll probably end up having 5 gels, one at 30 minutes an hour, hour 32 and 2:30, and then I will take a spare one in case I really need it at the end. But obviously I won't use it if I don't need to. But what you said, Rich, I used to do lots of training runs, 20 milers without food and water around here on the hills. Love it, felt great. Used to come back, feel drained. But what it did used to do to me is make me want to eat the cupboard when I got home because I was so hungry. Whereas now, because I'm trying to get used to my fueling now, I'm not coming home from a long run hungry. I'm not binge eating, and I'm eating much better. My diet is a heck of a lot better. So it is a double-edged sword. I do agree with you. Long runs are really beneficial, sort of fasted or not eating. But at the same time, I was a bugger for coming back and eating anything sweet I could find, raiding the kids' cupboards, whatever. So,
yeah,
you know,
somebody goes mad at me. You're like, I'll come back and just eat all the food.
Yeah,
it's just going mental. Like, I had 10 pieces of chicken in here. Where have they all gone? I'm like, yeah, sorry, that was me.
guilty. Yeah, no, that's.
If you're a new runner, then you definitely do need to try and practice different fueling, because,
yeah,
like Rich, I mean, Rich, you've done a number of races now, so you have experienced what it is like to use those gels. However, some people have not, and they need to get that right. So if you are new to marathon training, then I would recommend trialing. Like, I don't fuel on shorter runs or workouts during the week, but even now, like, I am fueling like I am running marathon. So in my long runs, I'm just, so my body's used to it. And then it's just trial and error. It's just making sure that I react to it well. And that's why I found that I've been trying shot blocks and I just haven't had any benefit from them. So I've gone back to jelly babies, kind of like a nice little incentive every couple of miles.
Yeah, oh, that's really interesting. That's really interesting. And I'm just looking at the questions here. There are some great questions. I do want to jump to them, but let's let Donato answer this one first. And what I'll say before Donato starts is that if you've got any questions now, fire them in the chat and we will have a quick fire at the end, because there's a few I've got my eye on here that we'll ask. So Donato, nutrition, what's your strategy in the race?
My strategy in the race is just I get my fanny pack out, and it's packed with all sorts of wonderful goodies,
Nice.
cameras, rechargers, hoodies, and gels. Yeah, bucket loads of gels. But no, as has been alluded, I mean, I am still practicing and learning and trying new things. Because I got stomach cramps in Chicago, despite doing a 3:06, I need to change the strategy. So I did have number 2 down. So Andy, when you're asking in terms of lessons learned marathon, I've got 6 here. So my top one was the watch, so I only talked about the watch, but number 2 is nutrition. And I think lessons learned is either too many gels or too much water.
Yeah.
And so for me in Chicago, I drank 0 water, and which is a shock to everybody, and I wouldn't recommend it. It's just again, going on what professional coaches, and last Sunday I had a live chat with Renee McGregor, who's one of the UK's leading nutritionists and worked with Team GB for London and Rio. And we asked that exact question about this. I think it might have been Rich asking about gels and so on. And her point was, and as I said, and I think Katie touched on, if you're a beginner, you need to try out these things that you're going to do for the race. So what Renee was saying is, if when you go out on training runs, is to take whatever you want to do at that pace, because sometimes when you go on an easy run and you take the gel, it may work fine, but when you come to race day where you're running at a quicker pace, that gel may have a reaction to your body in some way. So it's practicing the race and so on and so forth. So in terms of my strategy, it's different. It's been different for every race, So coaches will say, drink to thirst. If you're not thirsty, don't drink. I mean, I was peeing like there was no tomorrow before Chicago. So I was clearly fully hydrated. And there's drinks every mile. So at the marathon majors, every mile there's water stations, there's Gatorade, you name it, they've got it. And if you want to take it every mile, you can. But I didn't touch it. As tempting as it was, I thought, no, I feel fine. So I didn't have any water. And I've seen people, I know you mentioned it, Andy's overhydration is quite an issue, in the same way as underhydration if it's a hot day, and also taking too many gels. I really don't understand why people take gels at a park run. I don't get that one. But yeah, so for me, it's different.
I think hydration, Donato, as well. It starts before the start line, doesn't it? Because
absolutely
the biggest mistake I see people is panic drinking, because you get told, I've been at the London Marathon when it's really hot, and they're constantly saying over the tannoy, make sure you drink, and that gets drummed into you, and you think, oh yeah, I've got to chug all this water, but actually, if about an hour before your pee's clear, and you don't need to keep drinking, because you're going to set off from the start line, and within a mile there's a bottle of water anyway. Exactly. But you don't want to be feeling like you need a wee before you start. That's awful.
It's all about the preparation, and nutrition is the same. What you eat the day before, the week before, your body is all tanked up. I think Renee, she talked about glycogen levels, and we talked about hitting the wall, because a lot of people are asking about the wall. It's very rare for our glycogen at the start of the race to be full. So it's already going to be slightly depleted. So it's essential that, however, because we've all got different bodies and we burn it at different rates, is that you try the things. And like Katie said, I tried the gel type things, the shot blocks, I think they're called. Yeah. And they felt a bit odd in my mouth, because it's in my mouth all the time. I'm sucking on it. Whereas a gel, I can pop it, and you don't drink it all at once, so otherwise you get a tummy upset. So whilst it's a long sleeve, is you just slowly take it through over a sort of 10-15 minute period. And depending on what pace you're running at, you sometimes find, well, I've already done, because it's about every 5K. Once you start taking them, it's about every 5K, 10K. For some people, they hardly touch it, but there's things in the gels that I take. I can't remember the name of the brand, but it's got everything in it. It's got electrolytes, it's got energy, it's got carbohydrates, it's got sugars, and it goes straight into body. I think it takes about half an hour to process, but you get an instant reaction. I think someone mentioned a trick you can take is, when you put it in your mouth, is to rub your tongue in the top of your mouth, and that sends your brain a sugar sensation, and it makes you feel really good. So that's a little trick that someone mentioned if you wanted to try that. But again, it may work for some, may not work for others. I think some of the questions people saying, do we have real food? I've tried real food, but the paces I'm running at, I just get stomach cramps. So I can't run at those paces. Maybe if I ran slower, it would work. And I've noticed that when I was injured in the marathon, I think I only had 2 gels in the whole marathon, because I was running at a considerably slower pace. So, it's again, what's your pace? Where are you going at? What you've trained at? I think Richard talked about doing fasted runs. I think, again, Renee mentioned that our bodies adapt anyway. So when you're out running, it adapts to burn fat anyway. It just naturally does that, as long as you're doing the training. If you're just doing, say, once a week, then the body doesn't get enough time to adapt. Where if you're doing consistent training of 3 or 4 runs a week, then it's going to adapt as it goes along. So,
Andy, I've got a question for you, actually.
Yeah, go for it.
You said that in your marathon you overhydrated.
Yes.
What effect did that have on you? Because
I felt as sick as a dog.
Okay.
what, like vomiting? Wanting
Yeah.
to vomit?
Vomiting, sick as a dog. So first of all, I felt sluggish. First of all, it was sloshing around in my stomach. Like my body was not absorbing it. Like, you know, when you drink enough, but not too much, you just kind of like, it all just absorbs. Your stomach feels settled as it's all fine. So what happened was they were giving out 500 milliliter bottles at sort of every 10K. So I took one at the first 10K. It was obviously burning hot. I basically had that whole 500 milliliter bottle by the time I got to the halfway point. So I'd only run 6.2 miles and drunk 500 ml, which for me is way too much because I don't tend to drink on long runs, and in races it's sparingly. And then I had another 500 ml bottle up to 15 miles. So I'd had a litre of water by that point.
You drank a whole 500 litre bottle?
I hit this hill and I looked up and I just could not even run up it. I had to walk. I was nearly throwing up on the side of the course, and that was game over for me. It really was.
I couldn't even walk if I drunk a whole half litre of bottle. Half litre of water.
It was mad. I was just assuming it was so hot I needed to drink, but yeah, it's not a nice feeling at all.
I was going to say, what possessed you to drink a whole half litre bottle all at once? But
yeah, it was madness. I mean, I drank. Don't get me wrong, I didn't chug it, but I had it over the course of 6.2 miles. So I was continually feeding my body, and then picked up the next one. Continually, just kept going rather than drinking to thirst. I just drank because I thought I should be drinking. So that is definitely 100% a mistake I will not be making again.
Well, they give out bottles, I think, is it every mile?
Every mile, yeah. Every mile.
Yeah, it's a bit of a word of warning for people. You've got to be careful with that. Don't get sucked into thinking you need it just because it's there.
Someone else is grabbing it. And I feel really bad because they give out, okay, the bottles are fairly small. They're not huge. But I feel bad because sometimes on those stations, I only want a sip just to make my mouth less dry.
Yeah. Definitely.
Well, at London on that hot day, I felt the same as well, Katie. So I'd have a sip, but I would run holding the bottle, and then I would sip at the next mile. So I was just sipping, and then eventually when it cooled away.
I hate holding.
And by the way,
certain boroughs of London, in certain boroughs in London, all the kids are out and they're scooping up all of the Lucozade that gets thrown around and stashing it. I've seen them doing it. It's hilarious.
I was going to say, Lee Radcliffe's left a comment.
I'm going to have to interrupt because we've got so many that I want to get through, and I'm conscious of time.
Go for it.
Have to wrap up soon. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a bit of a quick fire, just reading through some of these. The first question, which kind of people have already asked, but Goku Runner said, what do you think about taking he's put vitamin I during a marathon, which is ibuprofen. Lots of people have said, no, don't do it. Why would someone take ibuprofen?
I completely agree. Don't take ibuprofen.
No, don't take it. You shouldn't take.
It's masking an injury. So if you've got an injury, you shouldn't really be running it.
Okay, exactly.
In particular as well, because ibuprofen is like an anti-inflammatory, and what that does is it affects your liver function. So there you are, you're trying to get your hydration right, and your liver is a big part of your hydration and keeping everything in balance. And if you're then impairing the function of your liver with ibuprofen, you're not going to be performing at your best efficiency. I mean, if you need to have a painkiller of any description, then paracetamol is the best one I think you could have because it doesn't impair your liver.
Okay, that's good. We're going to have to whiz through these, guys. There's so many. It's awesome. Kevin Scott asks, how far do you manage to get running fasted? So I guess that question is kind of like how far can we all run fasted? And I guess my answer
everyone's different.
20 miles.
I would say everyone's different. I think an ultra runner who does 100 miles could probably run 30, 40 miles fasted. But they've trained.
What about you specifically, mate? What do you do any runs fasted?
I could run 20 miles with nothing.
20, yeah. What about you, Katie?
Oh, I don't think I could. Not at all. I think I'm so used to. I do a lot of my training runs like midday at lunchtime. So
you've eaten already.
I've eaten already. I have a lot of early starts, so my metabolism's fired up already. And I think it's just part of training to get my body used to it. I do eat. I wake up hungry.
Okay, no, that's fair enough. Which is a good sign of a high metabolism working well if you're waking up hungry. And
I think actually this morning I did my hour run and I had a coffee before I went, but that was it, just to wake me up.
Oh, fair enough.
So,
and what about you, Rich? You've alluded to the fact you do a lot of your long runs fast. So 15, 16 miles.
I think if I lived 20 miles away from McDonald's and had to get there before 10:30 for breakfast, I could just about do 20 miles.
Exactly.
Oh, fantastic. This is a good question. I like this question. Paul asks, when do you know that you are ready to run your first full marathon? He's done several halves but would like to do a full. Anyone want to take that one?
I don't think unless you know you want to do it, but sometimes you don't know you're ready until you've booked it.
Okay.
Does the question mean when do you you've signed up for one? When do you psychologically think you're ready?
Yeah.
Well, for me, it was my Hereford long run. I think that was my longest long run, which was how many months? It was 3 hours. And as soon as I knew I could run for 3 hours, I knew I could finish a marathon. Can't remember what the distance was, but
sorry, I got that wrong. Yeah, I'm like Donato. I think every time that I've done I've hit my longest run in my training block and finished it well, you come out of it on a high and you're like,
you're ready.
Right.
You want to take the next stage. This is a good question too. Maybe one for Katie, actually, as you're sort of a coach. Guys, I always factor a down week in my training plan. Is this something that you do as well? So I guess for your clients and for yourself, do you factor in down weeks?
Yes, I do.
And if so, how many?
It's all dependent on the client, really.
Okay.
And what other races they've got going on, because you might have a bit of a down week if you're leading up to a race.
Yeah.
And I probably try and do it every 4 to 6 weeks for people, depending on their level or their ability. Because the thing is, if you build every week, because normally you do with a marathon training plan, the intensity and the volume of mileage increases. If you're just going to keep doing that, you're going to fall off and break. However, if you go up a few steps, take a down week, the adaptations happen, and then you come back stronger. You go up a few, down a step, up. Then you reach your peak. So yeah, it's really important for down weeks, and as well just mentally to have it.
I think so. I agree, and it allows your body to adapt. Now, Brian Rosser Runs has asked, I think this is more of an ultra running thing. Beer at aid stations, yes or no? So that's going to be ultra running. Now, as none of us yet, Katie, are ultra runners, I don't think we can answer that. But would you, if you were running an ultra marathon, like to see that? Any of you?
I don't like beer, so no.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, the old alcohol thing is, come on now, guys, let's get real. We were talking about hydration. Beer dehydrates you. I know some people say it's got carbohydrates. Yeah, whatever. It's got all sorts of stuff in there, but the main shit that's in there dehydrates you. So if you want to collapse after a few miles, carry on.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like that.
I mean, there was a friend of mine who literally finished a marathon. She grabbed half a pint of beer. After 2 mouthfuls, collapsed. Yeah. So there you go.
Not the most.
Having said that, I'm sure there's some really tough guys out there who can drink pints and pints of beer and run for miles and miles and miles. Fantastic. Carry on.
Yeah. Right, guys. I think that's kind of it for the questions. People are now, thanks to I think Rich saying he can run to blooming McDonald's, talking about cheeseburgers and pizzas and all of that gump. But I think we're going to have to wrap it up there, guys. We've been on air for an hour now, the longest live stream we've had. So we'll wrap it up there. I want to just take this opportunity to thank. Hey.
The time just goes so quick.
We just got started, mate. I've got another 5 points here to go through.
I literally just looked at my phone and thought, oh my gosh, I've got to be up at like 5:30 tomorrow morning. So,
Andy, can I just quickly say hi to Colin? I met him in Warrington last year. He's an absolute legend. You're right, mate.
I follow him on Facebook. I will hopefully meet him at one point. He did the Severn Bridge Half Marathon, I think, one year with his brother, and it was the 1 year I didn't do it. So hopefully one day I'll meet him as well. But I just want to take this opportunity, guys, to say thank you to all of my guests, Donato, Katie and Rich. They've been awesome tonight. I hope you've enjoyed sort of hearing what they have to say on the common marathon mistakes, nutrition, and answering your questions. I really appreciate it, guys. I hope you've all had a good time.
Yes, loved
Yeah,
it.
it's been awesome.
Thanks for having
Yeah,
us.
super duper, Andy, super duper.
Guys, if you haven't already, just as a little plug, we did this similar format on Donato's channel a few weeks back. I highly encourage you to go and check that live stream out as well. And fingers crossed we'll be doing something similar on Rich's and Katie's channel. If you guys aren't familiar with any of the 3 guests that are here tonight, all of their links are in the description of this live stream. So when the video has finished saving and uploaded, you can go and click and hit that subscribe button. They're all incredible runners. And yeah, guys, thank you so much for your time. And thank you to all the viewers as well. I really appreciate it. All that's left for me to say is my usual outro, which is, if you enjoyed this video, guys, please do give it a like, share it with your friends, and of course do consider subscribing to the channel for weekly running content. That's it from me and these guys. We'll see you next time. Until then.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.